We are at the moment inventing an entirely new business inside of our business. And you need tools, you need frameworks, and you need reward structures that enable people to be able to invent new businesses immediately. Yeah. And a lot of this is captured in the innovation management literature, how you go about this.
Fantastic. Certainly an area I wanted to tap into the conversation more, but perhaps just for the audience, I see some of the questions, or some questions have started streaming in already. So please add and ask your questions. There will also be questions that we would want to poll and ask for your response on. Perhaps we can have the first one up. As we discuss and talk about how do we make sense of the future and the role of leadership within it, perhaps we can have the first one. If you can take a moment and answer and give us your feedback as to where you see yourself and your organization in this, that would be fantastic. I want to tune to you, Amy, for a moment. When we think about the response of leadership teams and starting to think differently about innovation, starting to think differently about who they engage and how they engage other organizations, how did you see this in some of the environments that you operate in? What kind of a lens or a mindset do you see people employ that is helpful for them to start to engage with this new material? Or it is certainly, if it is familiar, at a different speed at which they need to engage as leaders with this new information. Perhaps you can share from us.
Right. Well, I think one of the things to return, this is a little bit about leadership, but having that long view is very useful because it puts what you were talking about before, the urgent and the important, into the same frame. As soon as you start understanding that always dealing with the important is critical, you have started already to ameliorate the challenges of the urgent. So that's one. The second is being very aware and having processes. So one is of change. So having a mindset that is equipped for thinking about change and a set of views, but also having processes in your organization that help you understand trends and understand what might be emergent, and to think hard so that there is less surprise. As Tashmia said, maybe we are not prepared or we don't know exactly the day on which the pandemic, the cyber attack, the unexpected political event happens, but because we are an organization that is preparing for change and thinking about it, we are more able and in a more agile way capable of moving toward different kinds of change, and may have even practiced what that would be like in another context.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let's maybe as we have this in mind, let's go back into the kind of the work of a leader. We started to get a sense or a flavor of how leaders need to respond differently and how they're engaging differently, both within their own team as well as with external audiences. Take us from your experience kind of into a mind of, and even yourself, from your own experience of how you yourself had to think and sense make your way out of this. Tashmia, you've already given us kind of a first preview of this, but if you had to kind of take us through a kind of a glimpse into a day in your life where there wasn't a textbook, where you had to think differently and create the new, whether it's a new business model, whether it's the new offering, whether it's a new initiative, and kind of the internal processes that are at play here. I thought it would be useful.
Yeah, I think years of training start to kick in. You almost have a learned response to managing anxiety, but brutal honesty. From 2 weeks before lockdown in South Africa, there's not a day I haven't woken up with a sense of anxiety in the pit of my stomach. But how you use that anxiety, do you use it to drive you further and look for the opportunities, or does that anxiety paralyze you? That's the decision you've got to make every morning when you wake up. And some days it is very hard to motivate yourself because it does feel like you're pushing a rock up a hill.